Welcome to Gut Punch, the podcast that explores life-changing moments. Hosted by Kathryn Lancioni, a seasoned educator with personal insights into resilience. Kathryn shares how life can change in an instant, shaping our path forward. Each episode features inspiring guests who face their own gut punch moments. Guests share their journeys through loss, upheaval, and triumph. What to expect: honest conversations, lessons in resilience, inspiration for growth. Join Kathryn as she highlights courage and perseverance in every story. Gut Punch is a reminder that there is always a path forward. Be part of the conversation. Register now to join Kathryn for today's journey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Gut Punch podcast. My name is Kathryn Lancioni, and I'm your host for today's episode. Today, we are joined by Jeff Tonn, who is no stranger to the Gut Punch podcast audience. Jeff was on our first season and shared the crazy story of his mother and the horrific life event that she went through, and how she so elegantly managed to survive and thrive thereafter. And I know from our season 1 listeners, it was one of the most popular episodes that we had. So Jeff, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
I am so excited as we go through the story, maybe not excited isn't the right word. I'm so honored to be back on the show again. How's that?
Appreciate that. No, and I'm truly honored, absolutely honored to have you on. So, let's talk about, season 1, when we shared your story, it was about your mom. And the crazy fire that she was in and survived, and how she used to call herself the crispy critter. I'll never forget that.
Yes.
And how that affected you. So today, we're not here to talk about your mom. We're here to talk about other things. So I always say life is like standing at the end of that place by the beach where the waves just keep coming crashing on your ankles, your knees, or sometimes they drag you under the water. So why don't we talk about this gut punch and who's involved, and we'll go from there.
So just to get us into the story, my wife, Carmen, was diagnosed with a very rare progressive degenerative neurological disease. The diagnosis came in August of 23. The disease has a life expectancy of 5 to 10 years. There's really no treatment. There is no cure.
What's it called?
It's called Multiple System Atrophy cerebellar. Physiologically, what's happening is her cerebellum is shrinking, and the cerebellum is the muscle control center of your brain. It's the thing that sends the signals to the muscles, receive the feedback from the muscles, and that's not working right. So the disease manifests itself several ways. The first one that she first noticed was she was having trouble walking. She called it fishbowl head, that her head was like sloshing around all the time. And it took a long time because it is a very rare disease. I forget what the statistics are, like 2 in 250,000 or some ridiculous number like that. So it took a long time for us to get the diagnosis, but we've been obviously dealing with that every day since. Every day is a new adventure. Sometimes the gut punch hits you once, and sometimes it hits you every single day, right? Repetitively. And so that's what we're dealing with, and trying to navigate our way through that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And I can only imagine, because every day, you wake up not knowing what challenges the day is going to bring. And, I know from my own experience, when you have something that they don't know what it is, they just treat the symptoms that present themselves on that day.
Yeah.
And that makes it tough, because they're like, well, what about this? And what about that? Because that was here yesterday. They were like, well, today you don't have that,
Yeah.
There's no treatment plan because they don't really know how to treat it. So they just try. And that's hard, because it's not like things that are more common that have a treatment protocol. Here, they're just trying to help you and Carmen navigate it.
Yeah.
That's a gut punch to itself.
Well, and we saw, I lost track of the number of doctors we saw in the first 8 months of 2023. First one was a balance expert, and he thought it was maybe migraines that were causing dizziness, tubular migraines, I think is what they called them. And it ended up not being that, obviously. Then we went to a different neurologist and a different one and a different one. And finally, a neurologist, we live in Indianapolis, and a neurologist here in town looked at us and said, no one in town is going to be able to help you. You need to either go to Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic because there's no one here that will be able to figure out what's going on.
So let me just interject. When he said that to you, how did you feel?
Like, oh my God, what is rare thing that no one's ever heard of is going on here that this esteemed neurologist here in town couldn't identify it. So we chose Cleveland Clinic because it's a couple hours closer to us than Mayo. And we sat down with this wonderful doctor in Cleveland, Dr. Thakur. He examined her. He talked to her. We had sent him all the notes from all the previous visits we had. And he says, I don't want to read them yet. I want to hear from you what's going on. And she explained it, and he did the exam. And we call it, jokingly, we call it the stupid human tricks that they make you do. Like when you may never have had this experience, but when you get pulled over at night and they make you do this and walk a straight line and do all those kinds of things. Unfortunately, I had that experience once a million years ago, but that's what they do. They have you do the stupid human tricks, and she failed. She could not walk in a straight line. She could not touch her nose. They had her hold her arms over her chest and close her eyes and stand still. And she was doing this. And I'm just like, yeah. And finally he says, well, I want to look at your MRI. So he pulls up her MRI and he's looking and he's looking and he says, your cerebellum impresses me. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think we want her cerebellum to impress you. And he said, no, you don't.
Wow.
Yeah. And at that point, it was one of two things. It was MSAC or it was another disease, SCA, spinocerebellar ataxia. One is genetic and one is not, right? So now we go through all these genetic tests.
Yeah.
To rule out the SCA side. And it ends up, she's tried a couple of different doctors. We finally got one close to home. Coincidentally, she had discovered the medical center at the University of Chicago was an ataxia center of excellence. So we went there.
Okay.
And saw Dr. Gomez, and Dr. Gomez says, hey, one of the experts in MSAC is actually moving to Indianapolis. His wife got transferred there, and so he's moving his practice to Indianapolis. Yeah. So we finally got in with Dr. Barboy, and that's been her neurologist ever since. But again, Kathryn, there's really nothing that they can do. You know, there's drug trials going on and things like that. But aside from managing the symptoms that she has, which continue to grow every day, there's really not a lot that they can do for it.
So it's not genetic, right? To clarify,
it is not genetic, right?
This is just
the strain that she has is not genetic.
So this is just one of those things that randomly occurs.
They have no idea, no idea what causes it. You know, Carmen is like, oh my God, was there something I did to myself?
Yes, which is yes.
Caused this, you know that from your illness, it's like, what did I do to do this? And the answer may be absolutely freaking nothing.
It often is. You know, I find the term, and I have said this to many people, I find the term modern medicine sort of ironic because there's so much that we don't know. You know,
well, especially when it comes to the brain, right? And the neurosystem.
That's right. You know, I know when I share my story publicly, you know, to conference groups or whatever, the logical answer, the logical question that's asked is, so where did you get it? Where'd you pick it up? Right.
Yeah.
People just say it like, so casually. I'm like, no one knows. Like, what do you mean no one knows? I'm like, literally no one knows. Like, got exposed to it, went into my bloodstream, almost killed me. Like, it is that simple. So, you know, and I think that scares a lot of people. And I know for me, I also went through the same thing that Carmen did, which was there anything I could have done differently? And in my case, and it sounds on your case too, the only thing I could have done differently in my case was not go to the hospital. Because if I hadn't gone to the hospital, I would be dead.
Right.
And in Carmen's case, had you guys not found, you know, people to help you figure it out, it just would have gotten worse and worse and worse with no explanation. So it's hard when you're doing all that you can do, but it doesn't remedy the situation. Yeah.
You still don't like the answers, right?
That's right.
I mean, we searched so long for the answer. In fact, even after the diagnosis in 2020, we went to 2 or 3 other neurologists just to make sure, right?
Yeah.
One guy, he walks into the office, takes one look at Carmen and said, "You don't have MSAC. You're not sick enough." What bedside manner was that? Holy crap.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just early, right? Which, as it turns out, it was. So yeah, you're hoping for a different diagnosis. You're hoping that they're wrong.
Yeah.
And then you have to accept that this is our life. And we've got the life expectancy, I think now with what they say, 5 to 7 to maybe 10 years from start of symptoms. Well, she was having symptoms a long time before August of 23.
Yeah.
So we could be 4 years into this already with a very short timeline.
So talk to me a little bit about kind of, this horrible, like the whole diagnosis. It's can't treat it really.
Right.
Can't, things aren't going to change. So how has life changed as a result for the two of you as a result of this?
Yeah, life has changed dramatically. So in August of 23, I had a thriving business, mid 6-figure income from a business that I had started. And I shut it all down. I had to.
Yeah.
I'm her full-time caregiver. There was no time I have one client left, but that I still service. But as far as my day-to-day activities, it's upstairs. That's my focus. It's what does she need next?
Yeah.
Are you okay for the next hour while I go talk to Kathryn on the podcast? Kind of thing, right? Make sure that she's settled in. Immediately when we're done, I'll go upstairs and just see what she needs. Because depending on the day and depending on the time of day, she might not be able to get up out of her chair and use her rollator. She may be sitting in her office chair and not be able to get up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I need to help her up. There are other times when she can't. It depends on the day, depends on the timing of the day, how tired she is. And it's new things every day. So my day has gone from coaching and consulting and speaking and traveling to cooking 3 meals a day, doing the laundry, all the household chores. And I can hear all the women out there saying, well, we've been doing that our whole lives, right?
Sensitive male. We all love that.
And I get that. I was not trained in the nuances of women's laundry. I'm still learning that.
Yes.
I think my next task is hair and makeup.
Okay.
I'll have to learn how to do that for her, and all the other things. And sometimes the care gets real personal, right?
I'm sure
Depending
it
on what's
does.
going on. What's been hard as a caregiver, and I'm going to caveat that and say, oh my God, I can't imagine going through what Carmen is going through. I
Yes.
don't think I would handle it near as well as she is doing. But what's been hard for me is that as her world shrinks, so does mine. When was the last time I was out of the house? It was like 2 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And, her world has shrunk to our main floor. She can't get down here where my office is in the basement. She can't get up to the guest rooms on our second floor. She's stuck on that. Thank God we have a main floor master, but that's her world, right? That's her world.
Can she does she leave the house? I guess to go to the doctor.
She does. She uses a powered wheelchair when she leaves the house. We had a lift, vertical platform lift, think elevator, but it only moves 22 inches.
Yeah.
So that she can roll in her wheelchair out into the garage, lower down to the garage level, and then I help her transition from the wheelchair to the car. So we go to grandson's basketball games in the wheelchair. We devised something that you don't think about, right? I'm standing, she's sitting. I'm behind her a lot. I can no longer hear her talk, right?
Yeah.
Because she's
You
down
can't
here.
have that easy side-by-side conversation.
Right. And
Yeah.
her voice, part of this disease affects her voice. So she sounds like she's 90. That has that strained elderly tinny sound to her voice, and she can't project. So this is about as loud as she gets anymore.
Yeah.
And so I can't hear her. So I took my wireless microphone and stuff from my speaker kit And I gave her the wireless mic, and I'm a recording engineer listening in on an earpiece. I look like I'm part of the Secret Service, one of those curly things, but she can talk and I can hear her, and
Oh,
she doesn't have to string it. Right. So you try to find these workarounds that help.
yeah.
It's the only thing you can do to keep life somewhat sane.
Yeah, and it's all these, like, little life hacks. I mean, every day is a new challenge, and every day with the challenge comes the experiment, and
Yeah.
I would imagine that with some things, the two of you just laugh, and I would imagine with some things, the two of you just cry, and there's probably a lot of moments, in between the
Yes.
laugh and crying.
Yeah. It's we go from laughter to tears pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Depending on what's going on. Sometimes it's a faux pas on my part that we start laughing about. Other times it's some whatever that's going on that it's like, oh, this is you're in again fairly personal space that even as husband and wife you really don't get into, right? And then all of a sudden you are,
The
and
the
so the
vows
only
the
thing you
vows
can do
didn't
is laugh.
extend there initially, and now they do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The only thing you can do is laugh. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I won't detail them, but I had a few moments when I was going through my whole thing that I had to ask my husband to help me with stuff that I never expected, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Boy,
yeah,
sorry." I was like, "Sorry." He's like, "No, it's okay,"
yeah.
sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
But it's, honestly, like, it's hard to ask, and I'm sure
yeah.
for Carmen, it's been hard to ask too because, like, we all think we can still do stuff, and
Right,
then the problem is, you have that moment where you realize you can't do it, and
right,
what's hard for her is, like, unfortunately, like, and this is terrible, but she's not gonna get better. She's only gonna
right,
continue to get
right.
worse.
Today's the best day that she'll
That's right.
have one. Right, right. And you're right. She'll try to forget or want to try something, and it's just writing a check to pay a bill. She can no longer write a check because you can't read her handwriting.
Yeah.
That's another one. It's the motor skill, and she just she can't do it. She'll write a note and she has no idea what it says.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
We're going through something similar actually, with my parents. My father's been in and out of the hospital he's older, for the past, year. He perceives that he could still do stuff now that he did last year, and he
yeah,
can't,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
having to have that conversation with him is not easy. He's a good old Italian, stubborn Italian man. So he still believes, that he could do all the stuff he did last March before he fell, and he can't. And it
yeah,
is, I'm like, I try to be the voice of reason, and I try to be Switzerland, and kind of explain, and I try to share, relate it to what I went through and all that. And he doesn't like what I'm hearing. But
yeah,
unfortunately, it is what it is. But it is so hard to accept that.
yeah. It is.
I think too, again, similar but different, is being in your case with Carmen, in my case and my dad, being the person that has to say that to them. You're never, I'm sorry, but this isn't
Yeah.
going to get any better.
No, no.
It stinks to be the person who has to say that.
Yeah. I always, as she's trying to do something, I always ask, do you want help or do you want to try to do it yourself?
Yeah, give her the choice.
Because I get that. I get that you want to be able to do it yourself. And so, it may take 20 minutes to do something that should take 2, but that's okay. But I'm also here if you want help.
Yeah,
I'll get that for you. I'll pick that up off the floor for you while you're trying to do it. We call them unauthorized moves. There's unauthorized moves. You are not allowed to do that, right? Because the last thing we want is for her to be on the floor,
yeah.
because she's been down there a couple of times and it's really hard to get back up again.
Yeah, and it's also like, there's so much humility that comes into all of this too, from her perspective. I know for me, I had some situations when I was in rehab or in the hospital, like pick your day, where I thought I could do something and I couldn't,
Yeah.
and having to ask for help is
Yeah.
so hard because even if you're given a choice, because you
Yeah.
see yourself, as we were talking about before, as one person able to do X, Y, and Z, and then you can't. And
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
case, what helped me get better was resilience, right? But more importantly, like, I knew that, I was young enough, and it, there was an opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
I remember one day specifically, I'm sure you've seen this in the hospital, there's something called the Hoyer lift, which is like this, like, it's like this chair, right? And
Yep.
it like,
Got one upstairs.
right. And it comes down and it grabs you and it lifts you up. It's kind of like a little amusement park ride. And I had just gotten to rehab and it was like the next day and the next morning and they're like, well, we're going to go into the, the PT facility. I was like, great. Cause I was actually like oddly like looking forward to PT because I knew if I went
Yeah.
to PT,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so they wheel this thing up to the side of the bed and they're like, I'm like, what is that? Cause at this point I was fully cognizant and had my voice back. And they're like, oh, it's how we're going to move you to the wheelchair. And the wheelchair is like sitting like right next to the bed. And I'm like, They're like, what do you mean, I'm like, absolutely not. And my PT, who really is an absolute saint, Ciara, she's like, come on, Kathryn. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't care if I fall. I am not getting in that thing because like I just like could not process and could not
Yeah.
accept that I had become so weak that I needed to do that. And it took me like a half an hour to wiggle my butt out of the bed into the chair.
Yeah.
But I was so determined.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so after I did it, I smiled and I'm like, okay, I'm done. And I said, I never want to see that thing again. And it never came into the room again.
Yeah.
But it was humiliating
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
realize that I had become so weak that that's what they thought that I needed, but I had.
Yeah. Well, and
So
one of
hard.
the things with this that they don't warn you about is that we've learned the word for it now. It's called anticipatory grief.
Yeah.
Part of
Yeah.
what you're doing is grieving what you haven't lost yet, but you know you
Right.
will.
Yeah.
They encourage you to join support groups and all that. And it's like, holy cow, I went on to an MSAC support group the other day and read a couple of posts. It's like, I don't want to know this.
This is the
I don't need that. That was just way too much for me to
it's
talk about when the end is nearer.
no, it's like, they have that technology now where you can do a full body scan and find out all the crazy stuff that's going on in your body. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Like, I've
Yeah.
already died.
Don't do that to me. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
because I agree with you. I mean, they, because as we all know, I lost the top of my thumb. And that was one of the things they spoke to me about in the hospital was this concept
Yeah.
of, and I was like, you know what? Like, not going to do, I mentally can't do that. I applaud people that
Yeah.
can, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
But I will deal with it when I have to deal with it. And that's what I
Yeah.
did. And
Yeah.
so I think it's a wonderful thing to suggest, but it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and we try not to focus on, I mean, you got to talk about the future, right? But we try not to focus on that. We try to focus on, here's our day in front of us.
Yeah.
What things do we need to do today? Is today shower day? Is today this day, right?
Yeah.
What are we having for dinner? That kind of thing. Because if you spend too much time out there, it can be overwhelming.
Yes.
I don't know what the right word for this is, Kathryn, maybe cathartic. We were talking about it before we went on the air. I started writing. I've been a writer,
Yeah.
but I started writing about us, about Carmen and I, about our relationship, the early days of our relationship. And to me, I had spent, gosh, I lost track of time, but it was probably most of 24. I was on the struggle bus. Let me tell you, I was not ready. First of all, I did not want to retire. I was enjoying myself.
I say you love what you were doing.
And oh, by the way, this was not the retirement that either one of us envisioned. We were traveling. We wanted to continue to travel. And, so I was in a dark place for a long time and still am on some days, but I started writing, about, the first couple of years of our marriage. And Kathryn, what it reminded me of is who she was, who she is, not was, is.
She is.
Right?
That's right.
She's not that disease. She's not this day-to-day stuff. She's this incredible human being, this wonderful woman that we have this deep love and respect for each other. In writing all that helped remind me, as dumb as that sounds, it helped me remember all that.
Absolutely. And I was going to say also, could you just take us through a little bit about like some of the, I mean, I know because I read the blog, but Can you share some of the amazing stuff that you and Carmen did before this happened? I mean, the whole Lewis and Clark thing, I just like love that. Like, take
Yeah,
us
yeah.
through some of the great stuff you guys were doing.
Well, I'll put in a shameless plug. So I have a book coming out in May called Uncharted Moments. It was so from 2003 to 2009, call it. Carmen and I decided we were going to travel the Lewis and Clark Trail, not in a contiguous manner, but for every long weekend, every vacation, we were going to do a different section, and we ended up doing the whole thing except for about 100 miles or so in Eastern Washington. But we had these incredible adventures while we were doing this, and we came to call them uncharted moments because they're moments that happen because you're there and you're willing
Love
to
that.
pause and listen and watch and experience. And they ran the gamut from the kind of the surreal moments of meeting long lost relatives that you didn't even know existed to standing in the Chapel of Transfiguration in the Grand Teton National Park and the awesomeness. This chapel, it's like a 20-foot pane of glass window in the front behind the altar, and it's framed the Teton Mountains, and it's just like you couldn't paint a more beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And standing there, and so these moments just we didn't even really pay attention to them at first because they were just like, oh, that was cool, right? That love of travel, we canoed in some beautiful, beautiful rivers in the US. We traveled to Europe, and you mentioned earlier before we went on air that you're going to be speaking in Paris in a
Yeah.
week or so. Love Paris. That was our place. We loved going to Paris
Nothing bad about
and hanging. And I write about one of the trips in the book, the first time that Carmen got to go to Paris. I was
Okay.
working, and my job took me to Paris about every 2 weeks for about a 5-year period.
Wow.
And so what I write about in the book was her first time, and seeing Paris through her eyes
Oh, I can't wait to
was
read
just
that.
amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, Elias and I had Elias, who's our producer, and I hope it's okay that I share this, Elias. Elias, who's our producer, was on a study abroad program with me in Italy last summer. I've been fortunate. I'd been to Europe a lot and been to a lot of churches, but we were in Bologna and we went into the Duomo in the main
Uh-huh.
square. It's the first time that Elias had ever been in a European Catholic cathedral.
Yeah.
And I mean, his eyes popped out of his head
Yeah.
and he was like physically like overwhelmed. And that moment for me, Elias, I will never forget that, because that moment for
Yeah.
me was like incredible,
Yeah.
because this was something, I've definitely been to my share of churches in Europe, and it was so wonderful to experience it with someone again for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and I will literally never forget that, because it was such a special moment. And so I can only imagine for you with Carmen in Paris, like how special that must have been.
Oh, yeah. And we always wanted to go back, and there's always tomorrow until there's not.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, we just had some incredible adventures, and what we learned on this, especially back in the Lewis and Clark trips, is to slow down and
Yeah.
and listen not only to each other, but I talk about listening to the water, standing beside a river and just listening to the water, or listening to the wind blowing through the forest, or whatever it is. You just stop and you have these sacred moments, this feeling of standing on hallowed ground because you took the time to pause and listen to these things. And one of the things that I hope as people read the book and experience our story is that they think of their story. Some of these uncharted moments that I write about didn't really register until 20 years later when I'm writing about them.
Yeah.
And so I hope that people think about their own journey and identify those sacred moments, those moments of uncharted, hallowed ground that you're standing on, um, and learn how that fits into their life. I don't think Carmen and I are in the same place as a couple without those trips.
Yes.
Right. I write a lot about confluences, and I'll get a little geeky here about rivers and fluid dynamics and stuff. But when two rivers join,
Right.
the power of the resulting river is not additive, it's exponential.
Okay.
The power grows exponentially. It's the same thing when two lives confluence together.
Yeah, that's right.
The resulting couple or married couple is so much more because of each other.
That's right.
Right. And that's probably my biggest lesson out of this. I've learned a lot, trust me, in the last year, about my role and my feelings of roles. And I've had to adapt, as I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But there's no place else in the world I'd rather be.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
You
Jeff,
know,
what did you learn about yourself from this whole experience?
what did I learn about myself is I can be a selfish sometimes, and I need in all seriousness, it's a different kind of leadership. I
Yeah.
thought I knew leadership. I've taught leadership for years. I've written about leadership for years. This is logistics, patience, endurance, a lot of things that leaders have to do, but it's showing up again tomorrow when the landscape has changed.
Yeah.
And you don't know what the change is. It's getting up in the middle of the night to help. You know, all of those things. And I learned that I'm strong.
Yeah.
To be able to do some of this, but I've also learned that I'm weak and I need help. I need Carmen's support. I need Carmen's understanding. I need our friends. One of the most amazing things that happened is I wrote a blog post about Carmen's disease, and I know you read that. I wrote it back in November, and it was January before Carmen said, "Yeah, we can put this out in the world." Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one of us were prepared for the result. On LinkedIn alone, it got 70,000 views. We
Amazing.
heard from hundreds of people we hadn't talked to in years. She was hearing from high school classmates. And yes, there was the support, right? We're praying for you. We're thinking about you. Is there anything we can do? But it also created this space for people to share their story. And that's what I love what you're doing here on Gut Punch, Kathryn, is you had this gut punch. rather than just dealing with it and living with it, you've created a platform for people to share their gut punches in. And that's healing in and of itself, to be able to share your story and have people hear and listen. And you do that so well.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that's all of what I've learned. And I know I kind of rambled, but
No, but one thing I want to say, Jeff, you weren't weak because you are weak, because part of strength is recognizing the ability to ask for help. And, and so, I applaud you for that, because I think some people think, oh, I got it, but the problem is, like, no one is an island, right? We all need help. And I remember when I was in the hospital, girlfriend, when I was in rehab, because I didn't let anybody come see me when I was in the acute care facility because I just wasn't ready. I got to rehab, and like, I literally had like a list of everyone that came. I had them all, physically scheduled. The nurses were like, "You're never in your room." I'm like, "That is exactly correct." When one girlfriend said to me, she's like, "Well, I'm going to come by. What can I get you?" I'm like, "No, I don't need anything." She's like, "Kathryn, you need something." I'm like, "No, I don't really need anything." She's like, "Okay, you don't need, we want."
yeah.
Like, oh, if you put it that way. And I wanted, like, I just like some face cleanser and some moisturizer that wasn't hospital grade. And she came in, my friend Melissa, and she came in with this lovely gift basket of all these like little bougie things that she bought for me. And I didn't realize how much I needed those little bougie things until they were there. And it made me feel somewhat human again,
Yeah.
And it was just so nice. But, again, like we were talking about, it took, I don't know, a sense of humility, and I think a sort of a sense of like, all right, to ask, strength.
It is. It's hard to ask.
It's so hard to ask.
People say, "Well, what do you need?" It's like, I don't know. And this winter, I finally gave up, I suppose is the right word. A neighbor across the street, wonderful guy. He's actually a year or so older than I am, but he came over to shovel my driveway.
Wow.
And I let him.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Ken, you can do that for me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And it's and it was so wonderful that he did that, because it was just like, he's like, look, like, I'll just help. He didn't
Yeah.
ask, he just did. And like,
Yep.
that's sense. And
Yeah.
I think like you guys have experienced, like when I was going through the heart of what I was going through, it was interesting because I joked, but I kind of meant it. It was like a preview. I shouldn't say this, but it was like a preview to my funeral, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I felt very honored. I don't know, or blessed. I don't know if that might be an understatement, but like it was interesting to see who
Yeah.
showed up and didn't.
Yeah.
I did not realize um how much I mattered to some people.
Right. Right. Right.
And then on the other side, there were people that didn't show up. Well,
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah. Yeah. Where were you?
I've known you for 30 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
will tell you, like, people always say thin the herd, like, I purged 2 of those friendships
Yeah.
because, to me and I wish those people all the best. I really, really do. But I was literally dying. I mean, I can't make that up. And and
Yeah.
and they weren't
Yeah.
here.
Well,
And
some people don't know what to do. They don't know
yeah.
what to say. So they do nothing and they say nothing.
Well, and
Right.
and I prior to this, like, no one likes to go to a hospital, right? But like I just someone would go into the hospital and I was that person, didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. I have always said to people, look, I don't know how I can help you. Like you need to tell me. And what I learned from my own experience, and this is so true, my friend Nancy, who's actually going through something else right now, but she's been through a crazy, crazy health experiences. And she said, Kathryn, people want to help, but they don't know how. You need
Yeah.
to give them
Yeah.
a role. Just
Yeah.
like when I asked my friend Melissa, like to bring me some skincare stuff, like, and that I learned that so much. I would say to people, like, when I was in rehab, could you come by like this day and have lunch with me? Or when I got
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
would you mind
Yeah.
coming on Saturday afternoon and just hanging out in my backyard? And no one said no. No one said no to
Yeah.
anything.
Right.
And
Right.
I was so overwhelmed by that. You know, I would imagine you guys are experiencing the same thing. Like people just want to be there, but sometimes they
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
how.
One of the most amazing things that happened, it was earlier this summer. Guy I used to work with, we're friends because we're friends on Facebook, but I
Yeah.
hadn't seen him in maybe 10 years or something. He reaches out and says, "Hey, let's go get a beer." So we meet. And I knew his father had passed away a few months before we were meeting. And so that was the first thing I asked him was, you know, what
How's your dad?
what
Yeah.
what was that? How are you? That kind of thing. And learned that his father had passed away from ALS, which is a
Yeah.
sister disease to what Carmen has.
Yep.
Eventually I tell him about Carmen, right? And he's like, oh my God, just upset and very caring and consoling and that all that kind of stuff. And I'm driving home after that and I get this text from him that says, "Hey, my mom has a whole bunch of durable medical equipment that my dad used. She will give it to you for free. It's yours if you want it. You just have to go to Philadelphia and get it." Well, I live in Indianapolis. And I'm like, oh, that is so cool. So fast forward to the next night, there's this group of guys that we get together about once a quarter for dinner. We call ourselves the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Love that.
And we share bourbon and we share stories, right? And so we're at one of those dinners and I'm telling them this story about Matt, whose mother is going to give us all this stuff. And one of the guys, Pat, says, "I'll go with you."
Wow.
So he lives in Austin half-time and Indianapolis half-time. So he flew from Austin to Philadelphia. I flew from Indy to Philadelphia. We rented a U-Haul, loaded this stuff up, including a
Yeah.
Hoyer lift, like you were describing earlier, and brought it to Indianapolis. But it's like, oh
Wow.
my God, really? You just gave up 2 or 3 days to go do this?
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not everybody needs to do that kind of thing,
No,
right? You
no,
don't need those huge things. Sometimes it's just the small things, right? Like shoveling a driveway,
Well, that's right.
or it's the same people across the street. They do a lot of meals for their church, and when there's leftovers, they bring them here. Some of them, right? And so every once in a while, we get these sandwiches, or we get this, or we get that, and it's like, man, that's just nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah,
thoughtful.
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
thoughtful. No, I just love this. All right. So the book. What's the book called? When's it coming out? Tell me all about that.
So the book is called Uncharted Moments. Let me say that again. Uncharted Moments, Love, Legacy, and the Lewis and Clark Trail. It comes out May 14th.
Okay.
Pre-sale will probably start sometime in April, but it comes out on May 14th. And it's really, as I was saying earlier, it's that journey, that set of journeys that Carmen and I took, and the lessons that we learned from that about ourselves, about each other, about our relationship. And so the idea was born in a neurologist's waiting room. I have wanted to write about these stories for 20 years since we made these trips,
Yeah.
but I didn't have the story other than, hey, we drove there and we saw that.
Right.
Like, who cares? And I realized that the story was Carmen. The story was us. That was the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And so that was the tone that I wrote it. So it's kind of a memoir. It's kind of
Yeah.
not really a travelogue. There's a little bit of history in it, but not enough that will make your eyes go crossed. Hopefully, as I was saying, it helps people recognize their own journeys
Yeah.
and those uncharted moments and what carries them through those experiences and those moments that shape us as humans and as couples. And I cannot wait for people to read it.
I can't wait to read it. And where will they be able to find it?
Well, they'll be able to find it online. So it's going to be distributed through Amazon and Ingram Spark and all those normal places. So bookstores will hopefully pick it up
Okay.
as it grows. There's going to be it's paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So I'm in the process of recording the audiobook right now, and
I love
hopefully all three of those release at the same time. And to show you what a geek I am, the launch date of May 14th.
Right.
May 14th, 1803 is when the Lewis and Clark expedition left St. Louis to go up the Missouri River on the expedition.
Well, there you go. I love that. And I would expect nothing less than that, Jeff, from you.
Yes,
So
because you know I'm a geek.
I don't know. I love it. I love it. Well, I just have to say thank you. I'm absolutely honored that you shared all of this with me, with us today. And I just admire you for so many reasons.
Thank you.
And I
Thank you.
will, is that blog on your LinkedIn? Can people find that?
It's on my LinkedIn, but it's also on my website. So jeffreyS.tonne.com.
Okay.
You can go to the tab that says blog and you'll be able to find it there. And I've got a new blog coming out tomorrow. I also have a newsletter. If anybody's interested, you can sign up on that website as well. I share not only these blog posts, I share updates about the book and how that process is going and some behind the scenes kind of stuff. You know, why was this moment important? What did it mean? And so hopefully there's value there for people who sign up for the newsletter.
I love that. And I just want to encourage everyone to read the blog about Carmen. It's an absolutely, I don't know, breathtaking I cried when I read it in so many ways. It pays tribute to her. It pays tribute to your relationship, and it just celebrates, and I'll use this word, the ideal to me, what a marriage is all about, unconditional love. And I literally, I was like, I wept when I read it because I just thought it was so beautiful. And I knew a little bit about what was going on, but
Yeah.
this just really hit it home. So I encourage people to read that. And it's a real good preface before the book.
And
So,
if you're looking for it, if you go to the website looking for it, it's called The Blog Post I Never Wanted to Write.
well, Jeff, thank you for being our first repeat guest on the Gut Punch.
I'm honored.
I know I'm thrilled. I really am, and I appreciate all that you've done for it, and all that you will do for it, and all just your involvement and your friendship. So thank you for being you, and God bless what you're going through. And I just admire you for so many reasons. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for doing this podcast in the first place. It's incredible.
Appreciate that. Well, and thanks to all of you for listening to another episode of the Gut Punch podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.
That's it for today's episode of Gut Punch. I hope you found inspiration, because no matter how hard life hits, there's always a way forward. Make sure to follow or subscribe to Gut Punch on your favorite podcast platform. If you know someone who could use a little inspiration, share this episode with them. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay strong. See you in the next episode.